Let's get the oil changed on the Buick. I don't even know why that's on there. Picked up a new ramp from a local parts store so I can get her up in the air a little bit more. The clearance isn't quite enough for me to get underneath there and do what I need to do. It's just a little too short. So we'll get her up in the air a little bit. Good rule of thumb, anytime that you have a vehicle up on the ramps, you want to chalk the back wheels. So I got a set of chalks as well. If you're using a jack, good rule of thumb, use the jack to lift the car, not to hold the car. Use the jack stands to hold the car. Otherwise, you can get hurt. But anyways, let's get her up in the air and let's get started. Always pick up your trash. Also got a new set for, just because I need a new set, but it's socket set. Comes with the ratchets. So we'll get her opened up. Use her out on the oil change too. We're just spending money today. Throw away your trash. All right, got the Buick oil filter. Here's gonna be 5 quarts of 530 motor oil. Of course, you'll get however much that you need. And we'll start with that. Couple of tips for you before you even get started. The oil filter that you get, I always like to make sure before I purchase it that it's not damaged, it's not dented or anything like that. Otherwise, it can, cause some problems. So make sure it's good to go before you purchase the filter. Now, when it comes to the oil, there's a lot of debate over what oil you should and shouldn't use, etc. Now, my particular vehicle, the Buick back here anyway, calls for a 530 weight. So that part's important. You want to make sure that you keep the weight the same as what the manufacturer calls for. So we're definitely going to use 530 weight. Now, I like to use full synthetic oil in all of my vehicles. That's a preference. You're gonna want to have your oil filter wrench. There's all different kinds. You can have like the band kind, which I actually like quite a bit, but these will work just fine. And of course, you want to have your tools to remove the drain plug of the vehicle. Also a bonus, I have this old torque wrench. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. This is kind of optional, but it's cool. If you have one, I would use it. It's a cool and useful tool to have. So just something to think about, but we'll talk about that in just a second. Chalk your wheels. Also, make sure you enable your parking brake. That's important. First thing I like to do when I get the hood up is actually to check the oil in it, which I probably should have done it before I got it up on the ramp, but I just checked it a couple days ago. But it just gives me a good idea of how low it is, if it burns oil. Really, you should be checking your oil, between each oil change, but yeah, check your oil. The reason why you don't want to check your oil when it's on the ramp is because your car's kind of sitting like this, or if it's jacked up or whatever, so the oil reading isn't going to be accurate. Remove the oil cap. Something I forgot to mention, but you're definitely going to want to have something to catch the old oil in, so this will work just fine. I don't know if the camera can pick this up very well, but right here, when I park the car, I see a little bit of drippage, and it's red, which means it's ATF, or transmission fluid. So I got a little bit of a leak somewhere, and it's important to note, too, that if you see transmission fluid coming from the front of the car, generally that means a cooler line leak, maybe like power steering as well, depending on the vehicle. But so that might be a thing that I have to fix here pretty soon. It's definitely not too bad, but definitely want to get that taken care of sooner rather than later before it becomes a bigger problem. But yeah, definitely if it's coming from the front of the motor or front of the car, then it's a cooler line, probably more than likely, if it's transmission fluid. So that'll be fun. Here's our drain plug. Here is our oil filter. It's going to be different for your vehicle. It just depends on what vehicle you got. So first things first, let's figure out what size the plug is so we can get it removed and start draining the oil. Hopefully it doesn't splash around too much. All right, let's take a look at the plug. Looks okay. Let's bring it out here so we can look at it a little bit better. It's always important to check your plugs to make sure, number one, that the head on the plug still looks, you know, in good shape, which this one looks fine. Doesn't look too worn, but the main thing you want to look for is the gasket. Now, the gasket is this little rubber piece on the inside. That's what helps create that seal when you're driving down the road, just to help it not leak. So mine also looks okay. Some plugs have the gasket built in, but on a lot of vehicles like Hondas, for example, it actually is recommended to replace the gasket on every single oil change. But this one still looks good, so I'm happy with this. So we can go ahead and put this one back in. So let's see if we can get this bad boy off by hand. And if we can't, so we got the pliers for it. Oh, come on. All right, pliers it is. There we go. We're gonna let her drip for just a little bit. Try not to get oil all over my garage floor. There we go. And we are off. Next thing you want to do is get your new oil filter ready. Now, you don't want to take your filter and just put it straight on because you want to lube up the gasket first. The outside here of the filter. Similar to the plug, the gasket, just make sure it gets sealed up properly. You're not going to have any leaks going down the road, especially with high pressure if you kind of hit the gas, you know, real hard. But anyways, let's go ahead and get this guy lubed up. What I see a lot of guys doing is they'll actually take the filter underneath the vehicle, use the oil that's dripping, like right now from underneath the vehicle, and they'll lube up the gasket that way. I don't really like doing it that way. The reason why is because sometimes, especially if it's been a long time between the oil change or just hasn't been done in a long time, you can develop a lot of nasty stuff in there, sometimes even metal shavings. And so what happens is you'll get some metal shavings or whatever on the gasket, which can actually cause the gasket to tear because it's just rubber. Now, one of two things happen if the gasket tears. Number one, you gotta go get your new filter. Or number two, you don't notice it, you put it back on, and then you'll have a leak, and then you'll have another issue. So I always recommend using the new oil that you're gonna put inside of the vehicle. So we're gonna use this, the good stuff. Get her popped open. And it doesn't take much, you really don't need a whole lot. You're just gonna put a little bit on your finger. And you're just gonna rub around this gasket here. Nice, fresh, clean oil. And then just in case, I always kind of get a good look over, make sure there's nothing on there. You definitely don't want any burrs on this gasket, otherwise it can cause it to leak. So something to keep in mind whenever you're installing the new filter. But this guy should be good to go. The other thing I forgot to mention too is you always want to check the base plate. Base plate is just where the filter gets screwed on at. And you want to make sure that that old gasket isn't there. And you can always obviously check the old gasket too to make sure that there's the gasket still on there, which in this case there is. Hard to show on video from this angle, but that's what's called a double gasket. And if you have a double gasket on the base plate, that can also cause a leak, so it's not going to seal up properly. So just make sure you have the old gasket on the old filter, which I'll show you that it's on there here whenever I get it pulled out. You don't need to get any fancy tools, just hand tight, get it on there, make sure it's snug, but no tools needed. So you're just going to go and spin it until it gets tight. So right about here is tight. And that, honestly, that in on itself should be okay, but give it about a quarter to a half turn after it's snug, and it's good to go. You don't need to keep cranking on it, but that will be just fine. All right, now that we got the old filter off, you can see what I'm talking about, how it still has the black gasket on there, which, let's see if I can pull it off. Not really. Anyways, it just shows that the old gasket's on there, which is great. It means that there's no double gasket, so we are good to go there. I'm still gonna leave it upside down for a little bit so it continues to drain, and we'll set this. All right, let's talk about this tool now. This is what we call a torque wrench, and it's really convenient in some cases. What it does is just make sure that whatever it is that you're tightening up is tightened down to the proper spec. In other words, the proper torque. So hence the name torque wrench. For my vehicle, it's 18 foot-pounds is what you want the torque spec to be on the drain plug. For yours, it might be something different. For a lot of GM vehicles, it is going to be 18 foot-pounds. That's Chevy, Buick, Cadillac, you know, etc. A lot of those are 18 foot-pounds. Not all of them. Some Hondas are like 25 foot-pounds, sometimes even like 26 foot-pounds, I think. A lot of like older Fords are 19 foot-pounds. You know, like the list goes on and on. But the point is, you don't have to have this, but I can almost promise you that the drain plug does not need to be on there as tight as you think it does. Because whenever you're tightening your drain plug down and you have the torque wrench set to 18 foot-pounds, I could almost just use 2 fingers. You can hear it click. The click lets you know that it's at the proper spec, torque spec. So I can just go and then click, and it's like nothing. Like, it does not feel tight at all. Same thing with the filter. I promise you it does not need to be on there as tight as you think it does. So something to keep in mind, not needed. If you don't have a torque wrench, just use the same ratchet you use to take the plug off or wrench or whatever. And when you put it on, just make sure it's snug. Don't, you know, go crazy with it. Just get it nice and tight with your fingers and just one good turn or one half turn, and you should be good to go. But I have it, so I'm going to use it. And there's 18 foot-pounds. We are good to go. Got my torque stick on, and I'm going to try to do this as quiet as I can so you can hear the click, so you can see what I'm talking about. But when it clicks, we know it's tight enough. So I'm going to try to be quiet, and let's see what we can get. Here we go. There it is. See, it doesn't take much at all. I don't know if you can hear that click, but it doesn't take much at all. I know it's kind of hard to see on the video, but you can definitely keep cranking for a long time and think, it's not even like all that tight, but that's really all you need. So a lot of people use brake clean to clean up after an oil change. You'll just, you know, squirt it all over the filter and around the plug, which I don't think is a bad thing. As far as I know, it doesn't really hurt anything, but I've never really done it, but it's something you can do. It does clean it up really nicely, though. We have now reached the most important part of the process. Adding the oil. For this particular vehicle, it does call for 4.5 quarts of 530 weight oil. This is a 5-quart jug, so I'm gonna fill it up until there's about a half quart left, and we should be good to go. Do the old 2 taps and a twist. And I have this old jug, which is really nice, so it helps prevent against the drippage. Always remember to put your oil cap back on. That is super important. You really don't need to let it run that long. Just a few seconds. Make sure there's no leaks. And you should be good to go. Also, check your dash to make sure no oil lights come on, because that also is an indicator that something's not right. But we're good. Yeah, we're actually showing pretty much right at the full mark. We are right there. We are looking good. Now, if you're anything like me, I always like to top off my fluids and make sure that my fluids are good to go whenever I change the oil as well. That way, I just don't have to worry about it, get a little peace of mind, and we should be good to go. So let's do that. A little coolant. If your coolant reservoir is totally empty, I would recommend checking the radiator itself to make sure it's still got fluid in there. Mine isn't totally empty, but it definitely needs some. But if this is totally empty, that could mean that your radiator might be needing some too. So that's just something to keep in mind. Obviously, whenever you're adding fluid to the radiator itself, you have to remove the radiator cap. Just make sure that you do it when the vehicle is cooled off. Otherwise, there's a lot of pressure there, and it can cause some injuries. So, something to keep in mind. We are nice and full with the coolant. This vehicle has power steering. A lot of newer vehicles do not. It's an electronic unit, or it's a sealed unit, meaning that you don't have to worry about checking the fluid in your power steering because there's no fluid to check. But this vehicle is a little bit too old, but we're full, so we're good there. A lot of older vehicles too will take ATF or transmission fluid for the power steering too, so the more you know. Definitely check though, check. All right, brake fluid still looks good. So all the fluids are still in good shape. Let's go ahead and check the cabin air filter. Mine's real easy to get to, but most vehicles it's going to be underneath your dash. Or underneath, behind your glove box, sorry. Not under your dash. I guess it is kind of under your dash. It's behind your glove box for most cars. She's looking all right. She's still got some life left in her. Now your cabin air filter, if you don't know, is what filters air that comes in to like the inside of the vehicle. So if you have allergies, you know, real bad, it might be a good idea to check yours out. Cabin air filters, you know, they don't really get checked very often, which, you know, kind of makes sense because you never see the filter, you don't know anything about it. It doesn't hurt the engine in any way. It's really just for your own health. So it makes sense that a lot of people don't know about it, but it's definitely worth checking into and seeing how yours looks. Because if you've owned your vehicle for a while, heck, even if you haven't owned your vehicle for a while, the last person that had it before you probably wasn't checking it. And so it's a good idea just to get it looked at, or you can always take it in somewhere and have them look at it too. A lot of places, they don't charge you to look at it, so. Always pull up on your hood after you shut it. And don't forget to remove your chocks. Very important. Now that we're on some even ground, let's check that oil one more time. Pull the dipstick, always wipe it down. And one more pull. It actually looks like we're just a hair over upon further inspection, but that's fine. This car burns a lot of oil anyways, but you definitely want to make sure that you're in the safe zone. You know, you can definitely get some problems. Having it overfilled can be just as dangerous to the engine as having it underfilled. So something came to mind too, but it's not over by much and it burns a lot of oil. I'll be adding oil in it in the next couple of weeks anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. But she's good to go. Get our hood shut down. One more good lift, and let's reset the oil life, and then we're all set. All right, everybody's vehicle is going to be a little different to reset the oil light. If you own a GM though, they're all pretty similar. You're going to turn the ignition over, and over here you got these 4 buttons. Some of like the newer ones will actually have it over here or even down here, but it's pretty much the same buttons. So you're going to find the car button with the eye. Whew, if my camera will focus. Little car button, it looks like it's got an eye next to it. There it goes. You're just going to click through those till your odometer, and you're going to see your oil life remaining. Then you're going to come over here and hold down that check mark button, and you are all set. Thanks for watching. I really hope that helped someone, and don't forget to clean up your mess.